Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this morning's meeting of the Cabinet of Staffordshire County Council, today, Wednesday, the 15th of September 2021. First item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Mr. Bradbury, do we have apologies for absence?
Good morning, Leader. Yes, we have 3 apologies for this morning. Victoria Wilson, Ian Parry and David Williams.
Thank you very much indeed. Next item on the agenda is declarations of interest in accordance with Standing Order 16. Do we have any declarations of interest? No hands are raised, therefore no declarations of interest. Next item is the decision notice of the meeting held on the 21st of July 2021. You have it before you. Any comments? There being none. Moving on then to the leaders' update. Colleagues, firstly, what an incredible achievement by Cheddleton's Lee Pearson to win 3 more gold medals at the Tokyo Paralympics last month. With 14 Paralympic titles to his name, Lee is an incredible role model and ambassador for Staffordshire. As a county, we've been incredibly well represented in the Paralympics and Olympics this summer, and I hope Lee, Adam Peaty and Fraser Clark help to inspire the next generation of Staffordshire athletes. Elsewhere, MPs voted last week to approve the Prime Minister's ambitious plans to reform and fund health and social care. While we welcome the government addressing the social care crisis, we need to see more detail. In the short term, the health and care levy will provide additional funding for the NHS, but increased costs for councils like ours, as well as our residents, as national insurance contributions rise. Looking after people in their own homes and helping them live independently for longer remains one of the best ways to ease pressure on the NHS. The Staffordshire care sector is struggling to recruit and retain staff, and we are currently running a campaign to encourage more people to apply for care jobs. But we need a national approach to promoting careers in care to address issues such as low pay, training and career progression. Last week's announcement and vote does nothing to address these issues, and we hope to see further announcements in the future. Across Staffordshire, thousands of children and young people have returned to schools, colleges and universities. Every day we see more people returning to workplaces too. However, COVID rates remain high across the county, and while we welcome the gradual return to normality, it is no time to be complacent. We all need to keep doing our bit to minimise the spread. If you haven't been vaccinated yet, please get your jab as soon as possible. I also urge anyone invited by their GP to get the flu jab to protect themselves and the most vulnerable in our communities this winter. And finally, last week, we launched the next phase of our #TalkSuicide campaign to tie in with World Suicide Prevention Day. Sadly, across Staffordshire and Stoke-on-Trent, 10 lives are lost every month to suicide, with the highest rate among men in their 40s and 50s. The campaign is encouraging people to get talking. There is a common misconception that talking about the issue can make people feel worse. But in reality, talking to people if you are worried about them and listening can help prevent a suicide and be the first step in directing them towards help. You can find out more on our website and social media channels. And so on to our next item. First being the minutes of the meeting of the Property Subcommittee held on the 1st of September 2021. Can I take that as approved? Councillor Price is indicating, seconded by Councillor DeVille. Thank you. Next item is the update from the COVID member-led Outbreak Control Board. Councillor McMahon.
Thank you, Leader. The cases are higher in Staffordshire than they are in England and the West Midlands, and they're still rising. They're driven largely by children, adolescents and young adults. There is a slight increase in the older ages, but it's the young that's primarily driving this. Thanks to the marvellous technology of the vaccination, hospital admissions are by and large stable, and the ONS figures in terms of death are compatible and on par with the last 5-year average. So in short, this virus has certainly not gone away. It's great that we enjoy the freedoms afforded to us in July that we quite rightly, normally before the virus, took for granted. In order for us to continue to enjoy these freedoms, we have to exercise caution and have respect for the most vulnerable. Distance where it's due, hand hygiene, face coverings where appropriate, and regular testing. I'm glad to be able to tell the Cabinet that lateral flow tests now can be read in 15 minutes, not 30, and it only involves a swab up the nose, not also involving the throat. In terms of the vaccination programme from the NHS, which involves the Stoke-on-Trent figures as well as ours, cohorts 1 to 12, that all those from the age of 18 and upwards have 86% have had their first dose and 81 their second. So that's good news. We've done well relative to the England average, but we've still got a long way to go. So there's now what they describe as the phase 3 of the campaign, which will be the most challenging part of the vaccination campaign to date. It'll involve the flu coverage, 16 to 17-year-olds, 12 to 15-year-olds, the severely immunocompromised getting a third dose, which is not the booster. It's a separate dose altogether, and they will also get a booster. Booster for the over 50s and all those, and also have to deal with all those not yet fully vaccinated. This phase will definitely be the most challenging, but they have the right contingencies in place. They've been working this up for some months now, and we know that we have 100% PCN uptake. All the primary care networks are signed into this, and pharmacies are being approved at pace across the county. We have some concern, not so much for the hesitant, but the young for whom this vaccination is not on their radar. The vaccination will need to land on some people's laps before they'll take it. And I think it's up to the system to make sure it does land on their lap. So Richard Harling, the Director of Health and Care, and myself are going to meet with the NHS to see how we can support them in making it easier for those who are young who have not yet had the vaccine. We will keep our COVID-19 defences as a county council, keep them stood up at least until April of next year. We agreed yesterday at the member-led Local Outbreak Control Board that were the government to introduce face coverings to be mandatory, as they say they might have to do, COVID-19 passports and compulsory working from home as just 3 examples, then we will have worked up our systems and our strategy in order to be able to deliver that for the people of Staffordshire. So currently, the vaccine and the therapeutics in terms of helping people who have become severely ill are doing a great job, but this has still not gone away, and we must give it the due respect that it requires in order to keep it at bay. Thank you, Leader.
Councillor Tagg.
Thank you, Leader. Really endorse what Councillor McMahon has said. I think keeping our defences up is a key thing we need to do as we approach the winter. I really welcome the Prime Minister's statements about his winter plan. I think it's measured, it's proportionate as we see things at the moment. But of course, he did say that the backup of having to use more restrictive measures, if necessary, will come into play if that is appropriate. I think it's get those jabs into those arms, isn't it, and get that booster out into the arms of those over 50 and those with health issues and those in the front line as well, which will be another layer of defence as we approach the winter. And I think you're quite right to have us as a local board, which I'm a member of as well, to ensure we in Staffordshire are ahead of the game on this, on planning for what will be a tough winter, but let's hope we don't go back into lockdown. But if we do, we're ready to ensure we do everything we can for Staffordshire residents. Thank you.
Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Leader. I've not got much more to add to that, but I think there's one thing that's really leapt out at me in the discussion recently around preparations for winter, and that's the fact that in this country there are still 6 million adults who haven't chosen to take up the vaccine. And all I wanted to say to those of them who reside in Staffordshire, or indeed anybody else who might be looking in, for goodness sakes, get the vaccine. For goodness sakes, don't listen to the fairy stories about there being some reason not to have it. Get the vaccine for your own good, for your friends, for your family, for the good of us all. Get the vaccine, please.
Councillor McMahon, no other people indicating. Would you like to conclude?
I think the most important thing to say is to corroborate Councillor White's remarks. We're not responsible for the 6 million, but we are responsible for getting the message over to those in Staffordshire who have not yet had the vaccine. It's a great technology. It's safe. It keeps you safe. It keeps your loved ones safe. It keeps the economy on the road. And it keeps our social lives on the road. It's the one thing that will get us over the line. So all those who have not yet had the vaccine, please get it. All those who are due a booster, please get it. All those who are immunocompromised and need a third, please get it. We can't say that strongly enough. Thank you.
And thank you to you, Councillor McMahon, for your efforts. The team at Public Health, and indeed at district and borough level, the teams in environmental health and other places. I know we've got district and borough representatives who are part of this cabinet as well, who are doing an excellent job of keeping the messages going, keeping the momentum alive, so that we get through the winter safely. Thank you. I'll move on now to the next agenda item, which is Staffordshire means back to business oral update with the Deputy Leader of Council, Councillor White.
Thank you very much, Leader. As we're all now very much back to school, I think it's pleasing to see that our businesses don't seem to have put their feet up over the summer. Our economy in Staffordshire continues to recover and grow, which very much reflects the national picture. What I'm pleased to say in Staffordshire is that we continue to be somewhat ahead of the curve. Our unemployment rate remains lower than the regional and national average by some considerable measure. The latest figures on universal credit claimants came out yesterday and saw another drop, part of a continuing trend that we've seen since lockdown ended here in Staffordshire. We're also seeing a consistent rise in job vacancies now, which are back to the levels that we saw pre-pandemic. It's notable that furlough is ending this month, and I think that the timing of that is around about right, actually. I think that it's important that any individuals who can be released into the workforce, who are not needed by a particular business, are able to go and join another business when there are many vacancies out there that we need filling. More broadly, there's been a lot of discussion in the press about some areas of shortage in the economy, so shortage of some materials, shortage of drivers, etc. And I think that whilst we need to be mindful of those, that those are signs of an economy that's springing back, and where we're seeing those areas of pressure, but which the market will take care of as the economy continues to grow, and that's very pleasing. But our work continues as a county council, both in our own right and with our partners. Our Staffordshire Means Back to Business additional restrictions grant programme, so that's using the money that government granted to us and granted to our local authority partners, continues to work well in supporting our businesses and our people. And I'll particularly highlight the Ignite programme, which is designed to encourage young people to become entrepreneurs and start their own businesses, which has now engaged with more than 7,000 students and will be powering on into the new academic year and engaging with more. We've now approved grants to support 171 companies with free training to enable them to make changes that they need to in the post-COVID environment, and we're supporting around 150 new apprentices through our apprenticeship scheme now. So those schemes continue to be there and continue to add benefit to what the private sector is doing for itself. In addition to that, and this is a particular priority for us in the public sector in our role as place shapers. I'm pleased to see the investment from central government through town deals and future high streets funds starting to come to fruition through the development of the business cases and awarding of grants for regeneration schemes across our county. I won't rehearse the names of the various places where those are happening. There are many of them, and we've discussed them here before. But I will just highlight one of the initiatives that the County Council itself is taking, which is in the redevelopment of our county town here in Stafford, and a few hundred metres away from where we're sitting, over my right shoulder, is the former Magistrates Court building, which has sat empty for some time, but will no longer be sitting empty in a few weeks' time because we are commencing the demolition of the site in preparation for a regeneration there, which the County Council is leading as part of the much wider regeneration of Stafford. This County Council directly acting where we are the right organisation to do so, to help shape our places and bring that life and activity back into our towns that we all want to see and that is coming back, but that we all need to play our part in doing. So a happy update, I think, Leader. A lot of work to do, principally for the private sector itself, but for us as well, to make sure that we do those things that we need to do to continue to support them, which we will do, as we have done throughout the last 18 months. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the work that you and your team are doing to keep the momentum in the business community moving forward, and the role that we play there. Obviously, we as an authority have concerns about the potential for a future lockdown and the impact it has on businesses, and particularly, as Councillor DeVille will know better than anybody around this table, the impact that would have on the hospitality business in the event that there's any further problems. So I suppose this connects to Councillor McMahon's pleas around the vaccine uptake. The way we keep our business moving is by everybody playing their part in society by getting themselves vaccinated, and once they're vaccinated, making sure they get out there and spend their money in the pubs and in the shops, and making a contribution to the growth of our economy. Councillor DeVille.
Thank you. Leader, your comment about spending money in pubs is music to my ears, of course. Warmly welcome, Philip. I warmly welcome the Deputy Leader's report this morning. I think key to this, Leader, is working in partnership. You know, the work that Councillor McMahon's doing now. We'll only get through this pandemic. We'll only learn to really live with this pandemic if we work together in partnership. And I think it's the same, you know, bouncing this county and this nation bouncing back. It'll only be done through partnerships. And I think the work that the County Council are doing in conjunction with the borough councils, and indeed, Philip, with the business fraternity, working together in partnership, that'll see the resurgence of business in Staffordshire. That will see the continued resurgence of the hospitality industry. And it's a really good report, Deputy Leader. Thanks for bringing that today. I think the future is bright. I think any thoughts of an autumn lockdown make me shudder as a businessman, make me shudder, because I think that we as a county and we as a nation are starting to live with this virus, starting to carry on our business and our leisure lives alongside this virus. May that continue, but it'll only continue by us all working together and us all continuing to look after each other, look out for each other and do the right things. Thank you, Philip, for bringing this report today.
Councillor Tagg.
Thank you, Leader. I think by any measure, the bounce back, which has been amazing, hasn't it, really, since the lockdowns. And I think that's a testament not only to businesses getting back up and running and really sort of getting back out there again, but also the support that I think, as the Deputy Leader said, about the government support that we've passported through. I think that has really been the basis for that strong recovery, and also the recovery in the jobs market. I was in Newcastle yesterday, where we opened the skills centre in town, which has come off the back of the advanced town deal money that was given by the government. That will be a training centre, skills centre for people to be able to up-level their skills, go to the next level, so they can apply for some of these newer jobs that are coming, which again we've seen. We've got over 1 million jobs across the country, vacancies available across the country, and we need to ensure that local people have the skills to be able to take some of those jobs that are at Keele University, on the Science Park, in other business parks, etc. So that's opened and is open for business in Newcastle with a partnership between the Borough Council, County involved, and also the Realise Foundation, part of Aspire, will be running that shop for us. So I think we are bouncing back, but as we've all said, really, it's the threat of a lockdown would set us back, not only the hospitality but businesses in general. So that's why it's so important, as Councillor McMahon pointed out and Councillor DeVille did, that we do keep ourselves out of lockdown by keeping this virus under control. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tegan. Thank you for highlighting that excellent example in Newcastle, which is a real living example of what we're doing together. Councillor Price.
Yeah, just in brief, I wanted to thank the Deputy Leader for bringing this report to us. And I'm aware that the County Council does some excellent partnership work with both our boroughs and districts. And as a Stafford Borough Councillor, as well as a Staffordshire County Councillor, I welcome the fact that you've highlighted the Eastgate Regeneration Project as well. The County Council has worked very closely with Stafford Borough Council in the past and is continuing to do so to make sure that we can deliver some major transformational work within Stafford Borough and particularly in the town centre. I think we have 9 major schemes, various schemes which are not only working with ourselves but with the borough, which are excellent. The Eastgate Regeneration proposals are acknowledged as we've said, as a key part of Staffordshire's County Council's response to transform the economy of Staffordshire. And it hasn't just been in Stafford Borough, it has been in other boroughs and districts as well, which I really, really welcome. And on another good news note as well, the SWAR is virtually complete. I'm not sure of the open date yet, but I don't think that will be far away. And that is unlocking housing and regeneration, which is been led by the County Council and Stafford Borough Council, and again shows the commitment that this authority has to improve the economy and people's lives. So thank you very much, Deputy Leader.
Could I ask the Deputy Leader to sum up, please, and then we'll move on.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, colleagues. And I think it's interesting to note that all 3 of the Cabinet members who spoke here are also Borough Councillors, and I think that illustrates that closeness of working that we have between the 2 tiers of local government here in Staffordshire, which is absolutely to the benefit of our citizens. Funnily enough, Councillor Tagg, I'm up in Newcastle a little bit later on today at the County Council's Enterprise Centre in Silverdale, and I think that perfectly illustrates the role that local government can and should have in developing local economies. That's one of our former mining communities, where the County Council established an enterprise centre to help people in that community start up their own businesses and have a base, but with support from our business advisors to help them get their businesses up and running in an area where perhaps fewer people than they should did that in the past. That centre is full. The money that paid for it came from central government through our local enterprise partnership, through their Get Britain Building Fund. But the people who are making it happen are local people in Silverdale with great ideas for businesses who we've been able to help to get started with that. That is our role, that is what we do. We did it before the pandemic, we did a lot of it during the pandemic, and we will continue to do it going forwards in partnership with the private sector and the public sector. It's a pleasure to see the effect that we can have in helping people to do those things for themselves. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor White, and some really good news contained in there, so thank you to you and your teams for everything you're doing. Moving on to the next agenda item is the call-off contract for the supply of ICT equipment and services with the Cabinet Member for Commercial Matters, Councillor DeVille.
Thank you, Leader. And if I may, Leader, thanks to you for your mention of our great Staffordshire Olympians. I think our county should rightfully be proud of their amazing achievements. Certainly, I'm sure Councillor Mrs Atkins would agree with me as Moorlanders that we're extremely proud of Lee Pearson's achievements. and of course the achievements of his horse, Breezer. Lee would be the first one to say that Breezer certainly contributed to Lee's success. More locally, Leader, I'm immensely proud of Sean Burrows from Cheadle. He reached the final of the Paralympic 400 metres, and we're all massively proud of Sean's achievements locally in my area. And of course, to add to the feel-good factor, Leader, nationally, wasn't Emma Raducanu. Absolutely amazing. All adds to the feel-good factor, doesn't it? Leader, I'll get back to business. And this is a fairly brief report, but a really important report, colleagues. The current contract for the information and communications technology expires on the 21st of October of this year. So it's vital, of course, that we have high quality technology to enable us to provide highly effective and a responsive service. So it's massively important that we have a robust and a rigorous contract in place for the provision of these services. Chairman, you'll often hear of me speaking of the importance, vital importance, of achieving very best value for money for our Staffordshire taxpayers. This contract absolutely does that, Chairman. It's really important because there's an annual value to this contract, a spend of about £1.6 million. The marketplace for hardware and software was evaluated very carefully, and it's obvious that working with a clear and a concise framework is the most favourable procurement route. So this framework enables timescales and costs to be reduced, whilst maintaining value for money and maintaining real benefits to this council and hence to the taxpayers of Staffordshire. Also importantly, Leader, is the framework ensures that we strictly follow procurement regulations. So the report deals with the necessary legalities whilst at the same time providing very best value for the Staffordshire taxpayer. If there are any questions, I'll gladly take them, Chairman. If not, I'll move to the recommendations.
Councillor Tagg.
Thank you, Chair. Just to note that it says in the report that as part of this contract, 99.9% of the hardware will be recycled, that Mark has pointed out as part of this contract. So and that's good for the environment and good for reuse of that equipment.
Thank you, and thank you for pointing that out. There's nobody else indicating Councillor DeVille, so can you go to the recommendations, please?
Leader, and I think Mr. Tagg makes an excellent point there. And I often say, I think the ongoing work on climate change, Simon, and our ongoing work on protecting our environment should and is part of our day jobs, isn't it? And I think everyone now understands that it really is part of the day job. Chairman, the recommendations this morning are A, that we agree that Staffordshire County Council concludes its regulated procurement in line with the Public Contract Regulations 2015 for the contract. B, that we agree, following the procurement process, the successful supplier will be awarded the contract for the period 20th of September 2021 to the 19th of September 2024, and that, dependent on the quality of their delivery, that the 12-month service extensions be implemented to a final contract end date of the 19th of September 2026. And C, that we agree that the Director of Corporate Services be given delegated authority to 1, approve the initial award of the successful supplier to the contract and authorise the Council entering into the contract with the successful supplier. And 2, to approve all subsequent purchases under the contract and authorise the Council to make further purchases under the contract. And finally, 3, if applicable, to approve the 2-year extension to the contract in its 3rd year. They're the recommendations that I bring this morning, Chairman.
Ladies and gentlemen, you've heard the recommendations. All those in favour?
Agreed.
That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor DeVille. Moving on then to the next item on the agenda is agenda item number 9, which is Developing Family Hubs in Staffordshire, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People, Councillor Sutton.
Thank you, Leader, and good morning, everyone. I think this item, Developing Family Hubs in Staffordshire, follows on very much from the item that the Deputy Leader brought earlier. We obviously want the county to be a prosperous place where people get on and do well. And the start of that is that our children and young people do that going forward, and they're in a position to be able to take advantage of new and interesting jobs and development that comes forward. In recent years, the County Council has devoted a great deal of effort to providing help and support for families, how and where they wanted it, rather than imposing a universal approach. Now, working together with other organisations, this next development will offer a more streamlined approach for families seeking a little help and advice. It will provide them with the support they need for children to have more opportunities in life, helped by their friends, families and communities. So this report details a phased approach to the development of family hubs, starting with recommissioning the Family Support and Outreach Service and the redesign of the Early Years Coordination Service and the Internal Children and Families Business Support Service, i.e. children's centres. Further phase of developments will be dependent on the outcome of the engagement that we will be taking place. So Staffordshire, as we know, is a great place to live. Most children are happy, safe and have loving homes, but there are some families that do face challenges that mean they cannot thrive in the way that we want them to. At all stages in their lives, we want Staffordshire families to lead their best life as possible. We have a clear vision where families and communities have the strength, skills and knowledge they need to ensure their children and young people are healthy, happy, safe and achieve their potential. That starts with starting well, growing well, and then living well. Evidence shows us that children's experience from conception to 5 plays a critical role in their development, and that the early years represent an opportunity for families to benefit long term. We know that measurable gaps in outcomes between disadvantaged and vulnerable children and their peers can emerge early, before children are 2 years of age, and these are difficult and costly to close later. The evidence is clear that a child's parent is their primary educator, but some parents will need help to develop the home environment and parent-to-child relationships. This can impact on a child's early development, and there is a strong financial case for providing early help at this age to prevent later, more costly support. So this report, ladies and gentlemen, starts really with the family hubs, which will build upon our existing children's centres, offer information, advice, guidance and support. But in the future, take a whole family approach and will be available to families with children from 0 to 19 and up to 25 for those with special education needs and disabilities. It will have a physical presence in the community as well as an extensive online offer. We live in a rural community across the whole of the county where it is difficult for people to always access a physical building. So we will make the very most of what we started to develop through COVID and having a good online and virtual approach to these things. And we will support families to achieve and maintain positive outcomes and to seek them preventing the need to their services to escalate. So family support and the outreach service will be procured to ensure continuity of provision beyond the end of the current contract, which is March 2022. And the service specifications for the family support and outreach service will allow for flexibility in provision and methods of delivery so that that service can be adapted to align with the emerging family hub model. There is plenty more details in the report, but I will pause there if there's any questions before I read out the recommendations, colleagues.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. I'd like to thank you and your team, Mrs. Riley, for the contribution you've made to getting this to where it is. The steady hand that you provided over children's services now over a number of years has been really excellent. And this ethos that is now well set within children's services of providing prevention and early intervention so people can live, allowing people to live lives independently of the state and live the best lives that they can with a little bit of help from time to time is really, really excellent. So thank you for everything you're doing there. And I hope that in implementing this, we're able to continue to improve the services that we deliver for children and their families. I can't see any hands being raised, so I think it's back to you, Councillor Sutton, please, if you could take us through the recommendations and we can hear those.
Absolutely, thank you. Now, I recommend that Cabinet endorses the strategic vision for the development of family hubs across Staffordshire, approving a period of public consultation and engagement in respect of the redesign of children's centres as family hubs. B, subject to public consultation, endorses the design and subsequent phased implementation of family hubs across Staffordshire as an integrated model of working, whilst acknowledging the future Commission intentions in relation to the family support and outreach service and the early years coordination service, in brackets, children's centres. C, approves the procurement of a family support and outreach service, delegating decisions, including acting on behalf of Staffordshire County Council, to enter the required contractual arrangements to the Deputy Chief Executive and Director for Families and Communities in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People. And D, delegates authority to make decisions in relation to the development of family hubs in Staffordshire, including the future decisions in relation to the early years coordination service to the Cabinet Member for Children and Young People in consultation with the Deputy Chief Executive and Director for Families and Communities. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Sutton. You've heard the recommendations. All those in favour?
Agreed.
That is unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, it is the High Needs Provision Capital Allocation Funding brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Education and SEND. Councillor Price.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, another good news story. We want all children with special educational needs and disabilities to be able to reach their potential by receiving the right support at the right time in their own communities and at the local school or place of education. So the High Needs Provision Capital Allocation Funding for 21-22, the Staffordshire County Council has been allocated 2.4 million high needs provision capital allocation funding from the government for that period. The aim of the funding is to deliver new places and improve existing provision in the education setting for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities, particularly those with more complex needs and with an education, health and care plan. Although the funding can also be used to support special educational needs and disability pupils without an EHCP, and pupils that require alternative provision, including children in alternative provision settings without an educational healthcare plan. Key areas of need for Staffordshire has been identified as school-age pupils with SEND, either with an educational healthcare plan or special educational needs support, with social, emotional and mental health needs and or an autistic spectrum condition. A consultation was completed on proposals to use the HNPCA to develop resource bases at mainstream schools for children's educational healthcare plan and SEND support with social, emotional and mental health needs, partnership working and co-location of specialist provision on mainstream site, or increase capacity in specialist provision to reduce the needs to access places at independent schools or out of county provision. Now this This forms quite nicely into our SEND strategy, which is for the 21-26 SEND strategy, and under priority 4, we encourage our communities to be inclusive. As part of priority 4, you have priority 4F, which states, whenever possible, children will access education placements that are close to home to help develop friendships in their local communities and promote independence, and I believe this helps to do that. I'm happy to take any questions before I read out the recommendations. So thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Councillor Price. I see nobody indicating, so we're back straight with you on the indications. I think it's a transactional sort of report as much as anything else, but over to you.
Thank you again, Leader. So the recommendations are that I recommend that Cabinet support the proposals to use the high needs provision capital allocations funding as outlined. 1, to develop resource bases at mainstream schools for children with education, health and care plans or SEN support with social, emotional and mental health needs and or autistic spectrum condition. 2, a partnership approach with co-location of specialist provision on mainstream sites. And 3, increasing capacity in specialist provision to reduce the need to access placements at independent schools or out-of-county provision.
Sorry, the Deputy Leader just wants to come in briefly.
Yeah, forgive me. Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Price. I didn't want to let this item go without a little bit of comment, and particularly in conjunction with the last one, because I think that there is a common theme between the two of them, which is about dealing with issues that people may have with their children, or children themselves dealing with issues as locally as possible and within a community setting. And I think that is incredibly important. And both of these items, both the previous one brought to us by Councillor Sutton and yours, both exemplify that approach, and they demonstrate that as a council, we do not want people to get caught up in our systems or in being taken away from their local area, their local communities, and in this case, being schooled with the children that they live nearby. I applaud this. I support this very strongly, and I just didn't want it to go without some comment, because I think it's incredibly important and transactional though these reports are. What they underpin is incredibly important to so many young people's lives. So thank you very much for the work you're doing.
Just mindful of the fact that we thought we'd completed, and that's the reason why you were reading the recommendations. Did you want to come back in any concluding remarks, or can I move the recommendation? Thank you. You've heard the recommendation, ladies and gentlemen. All those in favour? Agreed. That is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Moving on to the agenda item number 11, which is the strategic review of the care home market in Staffordshire 2021, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Health and Care, Councillor Jessel. Councillor Jessel, this is the thing of the moment, isn't it really? What with the government's announcements last week. So the challenges that you face in the care market are still front and centre for Staffordshire County Council, and hence this report coming as it is today is quite, it's current affairs, isn't it really? Over to you.
Well, in terms of the care home market and the service it provides, it's always been the top of an agenda. In terms of recent government announcements, I'll withhold my comments until I understand some of the detail. The devil is in the detail with some of these things. The report clearly sets out a clear objective, which is to offer good quality, affordable care that meets people's assessed needs and in a timely way. To ensure that the market and what we provide is sustainable. And the report also recognises the huge challenges due to COVID-19 that the care sector has had to deal with admirably. The County Council has, throughout the whole of the period, supported the care home market significantly, and the report details the financial support, the support in securing PPE equipment. That's now dropped off the headlines, but that was extremely important work that the county did. There are some key issues that we do need to work towards, and one of those is to improve the quality of care homes as judged by the CQC. Currently, we have slightly higher proportion of care homes on requiring improvement by their CQC rating. And the report does go on, and I'll allude to it later, the work that we're doing with care homes to ensure that the quality of care, that affects whether you're being funded by the county council or self-funding. It is important that that quality of care improves. And as I say, also to ensure the affordability, Councillor DeVille has mentioned value for money for the taxpayer. This is a huge amount of expenditure, and we do need to ensure that every penny is spent to achieve the greatest value, but also paying a fair price for the service providers. There is no point in paying rock bottom and then your providers go out of business. So there is that balance there. The report gives a detailed overview of the supply and demand and the costs of care home beds, and also the popularity and the success of the dynamic purchasing system. It also identifies that although a small proportion of beds at the moment are block booked, that process actually has saved the authority and the taxpayer nearly £1 million. And one of the proposals is that we gradually increase the proportion of blocked booked beds because it's an effective way of controlling costs versus what I would call buying in the spot market. In terms of our approach to quality improvement, paragraph 12 identifies 3 key areas of work. We have a quality assurance team that provides improvement, and a response team, which is a joint approach with the clinical commissioning groups. And we also have a care development team, which helps to promote innovation within the care home sector and assists with recruitment, training and retention. You mentioned this, I believe, Leader, in your report earlier on today, and recruitment and retention within the care sector is of paramount importance, and I'm sure will be, as the economy picks up elsewhere, is going to be a growing challenge for us to make sure that there is a proper career path and it becomes an attractive career for people to go into. The COVID, or the impact of COVID, has had a significant impact not only in day-to-day running of homes, but also in terms of infection control and the future demands and capacity within the care home sector. One of the areas of work that we've taken a different stance on, in September of last year, it was agreed to review the refurbishment of Hillfield House in Burton-on-Trent. Following structural and feasibility studies and taking into account the enhanced requirements in terms of infection control, there is a revised recommendation within this report not to progress with that refurbishment, as the business case is no longer viable. As I say, in September 2020, there was a further decision to explore the business cases for building 2 new county council-owned nursing homes, and a further report will be submitted to Cabinet on that proposal. That's all I have to say in terms of my presentation. Happy to answer questions wherever possible.
Thank you, Councillor Jessel. Can I just say that I welcome the block booked beds. I think you talked about the reduced cost to Staffordshire County Council as a consequence of doing that, but I'd also just like to reflect on the increased certainty that brings to the care providers. And through increased certainty for the providers, you can also have increased certainty around employment contracts for those people that work for the providers, which then flows very neatly into your emphasis around recruitment and retention, and indeed the comments you made around career progression. It is possible to encompass a career within care when there is some certainty, and block booked beds provide some of that certainty. So I'm delighted that you're continuing on with that. Spot purchasing is, in my opinion, inefficient and costly, not just because of the costs of buying there and then is greater than it would be by anticipating need, but also because of the administrative overhead and burden of identifying spot purchasing. Dynamic purchasing system, I think, has worked very well. And some of the potential pitfalls in the dynamic purchasing systems have been avoided. That is to say, for example, there haven't been, as far as I can recall, very many instances, if any instances at all, of somebody in Tamworth having to identify a bed that's perhaps, I don't know, in Biddulph, for example. So we've managed to avoid that pretty well, I think. I'd just like to also emphasise around the comments to do with career progression is that, in my view, moving into care is a vocation as much as it is a career. Okay, and I think it's the same for those people in clinical practice as well. It is as much a calling as it is anything else, and so it's important that we recognise that and reflect that and provide people with the skills and the training they need to deliver on that vocation whilst they're working in that sector. And I know that's something that's on your list of things, your very long list of things to do, a list of things to do that's even longer than the list of recommendations in this report. So I've seen Councillor DeVille indicating. So Councillor DeVille, with you.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Thank you, Mrs Jessel, for bringing this report today, which I warmly welcome, Leader, and I will be supporting the recommendations. Purely administrative, Leader, there is mention, for information only, of Nexus in the report. So may I please record my interests as a Director of Nexus. But thank you, Mrs Jessel, for bringing this report. Warmly welcome it and support it.
Thank you, Councillor DeVille. Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Jessel, for a comprehensive report there. Whilst it's pleasing to see government attempting to grasp the nettle of the macro issues with adult social care, and I look forward to seeing the detail of that as well. This illustrates that we are getting on with the job in Staffordshire of delivering for our residents, as we have done for many years. And I think the proposals here are very welcome, so thank you for those. One point as a Burton on Trent-based member that I just wanted to raise, and appropriate, Mr DeVille, that you spoke before me, as the council's property estate falls within your purview. I'd be keen for that site not to sit empty for too much longer now that we know that we're not using it as a care home. It is a bit of a sight to behold, and so I'd be keen to see some action taken on that at the earliest opportunity in what is a thriving residential area. So thank you very much for the report, and I hope that point's duly noted.
Councillor Tagg.
Thank you, Lisa. Just a quick point on the use of technology. I think we've all seen that, you know, the care homes have been the epicentre, haven't they, of a lot of the outbreaks for COVID. The weakest people have been the most, you know, the most put at risk and most vulnerable. I think the use of technology to try and so care homes can operate in a safer way. We know personal care and contact is a key, but some of the proposals that are under 47 of the report about some of those technologies that can be used to cut down some of that, and to, particularly when we're in the worlds of viruses and pandemics, that can be welcomed. I think also the lifestyle interactions as well, which are detailed in the report, are brilliant, and you know, technology is there to be enhanced and to enhance this operation of care homes, really for the benefit of those people that are living in the care homes, and I think it has to be welcomed. Thank you.
And Councillor Jessel, you've been very keen on innovation in the care sector. I know that's a theme that you are developing through your current work. So it's over to you to sum up, please, Councillor Jessel, and give us the recommendations.
Fine, thank you very much, and thank you for the support from my colleagues. I do apologise for not mentioning Nexus. They have been a key part in providing the service, and obviously taking over from Meadow Rise and Bracken houses as well. So their work is ongoing and is appreciated, and I'm sure there's potential there in the future. Councillor Tagg actually makes a very valid comment in terms of innovation, as indeed you do. I think we have to acknowledge that we are providing a service for an increasing number of people. As you know, the County Council is trying to facilitate and encourage independence as long as possible, so that people go into care homes for as short a time as is necessary. But with the demographics, there is an ageing population of which I'm clearly a member of, but still fighting fit, thank goodness, I'm touching wood. But actually, as I've mentioned, with a growing economy and our employment figures or unemployment figures in the county are now decreasing, which is really good news, but of course it does make recruitment into the sector very difficult. So what we do have to do is innovate, not only ourselves, but also encourage the private providers to innovate. They're not terribly proactive in this area because they need to maximise the benefit of the staff that they have got so that they can provide those better paid jobs with a good career progression. So there's a bit of a transformation that needs to go on. Otherwise, the problem will only get worse and worse. So, as you say, I am very keen on stimulating this market. So if there's no other questions or comments, I will go through this significant number of recommendations. I recommend that Cabinet A recognise that the role that the care homes have played during COVID-19 and the impact of the pandemic on the sector. B, note and endorse the Council's overall strategic objectives and approach to commissioning care homes. C, agree not to progress refurbishment of the Hillfield site, Burton-on-Trent, to provide additional nursing home capacity owing to the results of the structural and feasibility studies. D, to approve implementation of guide prices for care home placements. E, approve extension and variation of the current dynamic purchasing system contract for care homes for a further period from the 1st of April 22 until no later than the 31st of March 23. F, to approve re-procurement of a new dynamic purchasing system for care homes with a revised service specification and delegate to the Director of Health and Care authority to award new contracts through the new dynamic purchasing system effective from April 2023. Approve a phased increase in the number of block booked care home beds in accordance with demand and delegate to the Director of Health and Care authority to award block booked bed contracts. That's a tongue twister. H, complete a review of the approach to contracting for complex residential and nursing home placements and delegate to the Director of Health and Care to consider the options and implement a preferred option in consultation with the corporate senior leadership team and the Cabinet Member for Health and Care. I note the opportunities to use technology and innovation to support care homes to meet the challenges identified in this report. I so move, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Jessel. You've heard those recommendations. All those in favour?
Agreed.
That is unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Move on then to agenda item number 12, Treasury Management Report for the year ended 31st of March 2021. It's a year-ending report brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources. Now, it won't have escaped your attention that the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources is not here. So that means it falls to me to deliver the Treasury Management Report for the year ended 31st of March 2021. And I intend to bring some sizzle to this sausage. So strap in, stand by, here we go. It's 6 sections. First of all, the external context. Second, long-term borrowing. Third, interest rates. 4, loan rescheduling and minimum revenue provision. 5, investments. And 6, prudential indicators. And before I go any further, I'd just like to say thank you through John Tradewell to the Treasury Management team. It was the first briefing I've had from the Treasury Management team, and they clearly know what they're talking about, which is quite reassuring given the amounts of money we're talking about this morning. So on the external context, 2020-21 was affected by COVID-19. First lockdown did massive damage to the economy, but a recovery is expected as pent-up demand and savings are released. Support from government has come at a cost with borrowing now around 100% of GDP. I'll just say that again, 100% of GDP, but hopefully returning to a sustainable level by 25-26. The final Brexit agreement on the 24th of December 2020 removes significant downside risk from the economy. There are, as we all know, however, remaining problems in some trade areas. To long-term borrowing, the Treasury Management Strategy Report for 1920 stated to favour using cash in lieu of borrowing, as in previous years, and this was followed with no new in-year borrowing. Debt funded from internal cash balances decreased from 105 million to just under 101 million during 2021, as debt created was less than the minimum revenue provision, meaning that the overall use of cash has decreased. The Council had 568 million of debt as at the 31st of March 2021, financed as shown in paragraph 27. Appendix 2 shows the maturity profile of that debt. Interest rates, the bank rate remains at 0.1%, and this is forecast to be maintained in the medium term. Longer term rates affect the Council for borrowing, which is linked to gilts. The Public Works Loan Board borrowing rates were increased by HM Treasury by 1% across the board in 19 to discourage councils from borrowing for commercial investment. This was reviewed and removed on the 26th of November it's due to be reviewed on the 26th of November 2021, restoring the straight link to gilts. The Council should avoid new loans at this time unless needed, as having additional cash would lead to a cost of carry as investment rates are lower than PWLB. The strategy depends on availability of cash, and this graph is set out in paragraph 23 and shows the Council has sufficient funds to do this and has saved a potential of 1.734 million by following this strategy, as shown in paragraph 27. So using cash is saving us significant sums of cash, which is good. Loan rescheduling and minimum revenue provision. Loan rescheduling was not financially viable during 2021. In accordance with the policy, the Council paid just under £21 million of minimum revenue provision, as set out in paragraph 31. Investments. All investments were in compliance with the annual investment strategy of 2020-21. Appendix 3 shows the current investment list. The Treasury Management Panel met monthly to review Treasury activity, and this ensured that issues were kept under review, such as Brexit and the pandemic, and actions could be considered to protect the Council's assets, i.e. reducing exposure to banks. Credit ratings for all investments were monitored throughout the year, and the Council earned 1.591 million in interest with an average rate of return of 0.68%, as shown in paragraph 51. This return reflected the impact of the pandemic. The list of investments the Council had held as at the 31st of March 2021 is shown in paragraph 54 and stood at £279.5 million. And finally, the prudential indicators. The prudential indicators for 2020-21 are shown in Appendix 4. All were complied with except variable interest rates, which were exceeded due to government grants, local enterprise partnership funds, and the Midlands Engine of 22.296 million. A detailed explanation of this is at paragraph 55.4. Ladies and gentlemen, I think you'll agree that that was sizzle in the sausage of the Treasury Management Report. Don't know about you, but I certainly think so. I'm looking for lots of questions, obviously, before I read out the recommendations. Questions there are none. That's disappointing. Oh, Councillor Jessel, there we go.
I can't let you get away with that. Very well presented, Leader. These reports are always somewhat dry. I've heard them from different authorities over many, many years, but I have to say that was one of the most sizzling. I think one of the points I want to make is that obviously the future of interest rates could potentially, if they increase, as I am sure they probably will, have a significant impact on the finances of this authority. The report does allude a little to that, but I think it's something that we need to be conscious of, that a prudent approach in terms of any future borrowings are taken, because should interest rates increase in the next 3 to 4 years, as they may well, that could have a significant impact on the financial standing of this authority, and is a big risk for us.
Thank you for that. I had a wide-ranging conversation with the Treasury Management team. We were scheduled for a 30-minute catch-up, and it went on for quite some time because there are a range of factors in the economy and through the Bank of England and the impact of the pandemic, which we need to be factoring in. It is reassuring that everything I chucked at them, they had an answer to, because they're modelling various contingencies and the impact it has on the management of the Treasury here at the County Council. It isn't just things like interest rates, it's also the unwinding of quantitative easing and how that might affect the Treasury management situation. So I think we can be assured that our Treasury management team are, in inverted commas, on it. And John, thank you very much indeed to them for the hard work that they do. But your point is well made, and we'll reflect that back to the team. So there are no... Oh, there is one other question. Councillor DeVille.
I'll be very, very brief, Leader. Mrs. Jessel, you won't be surprised to hear that I agree with you. I think we do need a very prudent approach to the future. Leader, after an extremely difficult time for us all, I feel really reassured that our Treasury management team are all over this. They're on to the current situation where we are now. I think more importantly, they are looking to the future, which, of course, remains uncertain. So a very, very good report, and thank you, Leader, for bringing this morning.
There's no further indication. So the recommendations are that the Treasury management activities for the year ended 31st of March 2021, including the prudential indicators outturn detailed in Appendix 4, be noted. B, Cabinet approved the use of MRP at 31st of March 2021 as set out in paragraphs 31 and 32. C, Cabinet note the annual investment strategy is considered prudent and sufficiently robust to meet any market challenges created by the UK's decision to leave the European Union and pressures caused by the COVID-19 pandemic, and that officers will continue to monitor the position. I so move. All those in favour?
Agree.
That being unanimous, we now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the decisions made by Cabinet members under delegated powers. Just get to the right part. Right, the first delegated decision came from the Cabinet Member for Education and Send in approving, in accordance with the Government's requirements, a variation to the admission arrangements for community and voluntary controlled schools in 21-22 and 22-23 to ensure that children previously in state care and adopted from outside England and Wales are given equal top priority in oversubscription criteria alongside children currently in care and previously in care from within England and Wales. And the second was brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Health and Care in approving proposals to relocate and merge Boney Hay and Tamworth Specialist Day opportunities to Lichfield. Those are the two items taken under delegated powers. Moving then forward to the forward plan of key decisions. All the following are in October and in public. First, impact of COVID-19 on SCC Communities Economy and Organisation Recovery Progress, update October 2021 and way forward, brought to you by myself. Second, Staffordshire Bus Strategy Bus Service Improvement Plan, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Highways and Transport. Third, Integrated Performance Report, Quarter 2, 21-22, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources and myself. Fourth, Supplementary Capital Programme for Schools 21-22, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Education and Send, Councillor Price. Fifth, Climate Change Annual Report and Climate Change Action Plan 2, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Environment and Infrastructure and Climate Change, Councillor Tagg. Sixth, Adult Learning Disability 2022 Community Offer in update on learning disability residential services directly provided by Staffordshire County Council, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Health and Care, Councillor Jessel. Carrying on then, we've got the Nexus Trading Services Limited Annual Report for 2020-21, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Commercial Matters, Councillor DeVille. Then we've got Formal Report for the Local Government and Social Care Ombudsman, Cabinet Member for Education and Send, Councillor Price. Then Branson Locks Primary proposed 2FE and associated Section 106 contributions waive school Cabinet Member for Education and Send, Councillor Price. Then into the private session, it's a big one in October. Private session in October is dry mix recycling treatment, April 2022, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Environment, Infrastructure and Climate Change, Councillor Tagg. Moving forward into November, Treasury Management Half-Yearly Report 2021-2022, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources, or his substitute, the Leader of Council. Then in November, you've got the Integrated Service Model for In-House Day Opportunities and Respite, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Health and Care, Councillor Jessel. Then the Future of Replacement Care Services, Learning Disabilities, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Health and Care, Councillor Jessel. In December, we've got the IA 2609 Framework for Responsive Property Maintenance and Day Works, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Commercial Matters, Councillor DeVille. The reference number, relevant? That's real sizzle, is it? Okay. And then in February, the Integrated Performance Report, Quarter 3, 21-22, brought to you by the Cabinet Member for Finance and Resources and myself. And that is the forward plan of key decisions. Any comments? No. Thank you very much. So move forward then to the exclusion of the public. I move that the public be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business which involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the paragraphs of Part 1, Schedule 12A, as amended of the Local Government Act 1972, indicated below. I so move.